The COVID-19 pandemic in education was probably one of the wildest times in my life. People who were in that field had to go from in-person education activities to figuring out how do we deliver content and instruction in a virtual manner. A lot of us were in the house eating Uber Eats, but also on social media. And during that time, TikTok had become very, very popular with the Gen Zers, with almost about half of the population using the platform. It was also an opportune time for teachers because they used it for engaging with students. They found lesson plans and resources, and they were able to connect with teachers around the globe. And given with all these teacher shortages and teachers not getting paid what they deserve, a lot of teachers also took that to their advantage by becoming micro celebrities on TikTok, using their platform to share themselves, their knowledge about the profession, but also promoting educational practices. But when does it become too much? Recently, I saw a viral video of another Black male teacher who has almost 700,000 followers on TikTok, and there was a controversial video where he had about 4 female students take out his hair during a live stream. It had a lot of mixed reviews. Some people thought it was harmless and showed his good relationships with his students, while others thought it was inappropriate. That teacher, Jock Lee, responded on TikTok, calling critics jealous and saying that they didn't have good relationships with their own children. And since the making of this video, he's been placed on administrative leave. And as I was listening to the discourse on social media, more specifically TikTok, I was just thinking about social media ethics and what are the complexities of teacher-student relationships in the digital age. I've talked on my channel quite a lot about the importance of positive relationships between teachers and students. We know that it leads to increased student engagement. It fosters achievement in school subjects. It helps lower the risk of students, especially of color, dropping out of high school. And also teachers benefit as well, because at a time of teacher layoffs, teacher shortages, and the struggle to find and retain qualified teachers, having positive teacher-student relationships have also been shown to help increase teachers' well-being. And while this man has gone viral for his content, looking at his other stuff, I was like, okay, he seems to genuinely enjoy his job and his students, which is a beautiful thing. Like I mentioned in my Janine Teague's video months ago, I do think that he seems to embody that teacher academic optimism. And I think we should all have that joy, especially if you're in the education profession. But I think one thing that stuck out to me as he was responding to the criticism and basically deflecting, which I think that never turns well, is just some of the language that he used when describing his female students as besties. Something that I always say, especially when working with newer educators, you can be friendly with students without actually being friends. A teacher's role, an educator's role, all encompassing, is to be a trusted adult that is warm, accessible, there to listen within reason, being fair, and just guiding them on the path to be productive citizens in the world. When it comes to the video, honestly, I'm not a fan. Students playing in your hair, faces were shown, their school was identified, he was on live. There's just so many things that I personally don't agree with. And this is where boundaries come in, because they're important in teacher-student relationships because they create a safe and respectful environment for both people. They help establish clear roles and responsibilities. They help prevent misunderstandings. And I think when it comes to teacher-student dynamics, I think it's also important to recognize and manage certain boundary issues that can arise, especially when it comes to youth. I believe he said that he's a middle school science teacher. And I think one common challenge is oversharing personal information, where teachers might inadvertently disclose too much about their personal lives, leading to really uncomfortable situations. I don't know how many times, and you might have too, where you see a teacher has gotten fired because her OnlyFans was discovered. I think another concern involves physical boundaries, such as inappropriate physical contact, which can result to misunderstandings or allegations of misconduct. And again, I don't think the removing of his hair is sexual in nature. However, the optics don't look good when you have multiple girls all in your head. Personally, I'm very professional whenever a student wants to engage in physical touch. It doesn't help that I look very young, even though I'm in my early 30s. Personally, if a student ever wants to engage with me, a side hug, a high five, a pound, or a dap can never steer you wrong. I honestly can't even recall a time that I posted a student on my socials because I want to respect my privacy. I want to respect their privacy. I want to maintain boundaries, but I also want to be compliant with school and district policies. I've worked in many different nonprofits. I've worked alongside teachers. And as annoying as it was when it was time to create and run programs, it was super annoying to create a handbook that includes waivers and trainings and background checks for instructors and media release forms and emergency protocols. But they're needed, of course, because it's used to both protect the students and the adults. And unfortunately, and I'm not accusing Jack Lee of this, but we've also seen a lot of stories in the media where these trusted adults have manipulated children. While I do believe students are very smart and very capable, in youth development, like, they haven't even really reached full maturation. With middle school kids, like, they're thinking about, who am I? Where do I belong in the world? They're building relationships, figuring out like what works for them and what doesn't. So as a trusted adult, it's our job to maintain those boundaries. I was also reading a tweet from an educator who happened to work in the same school district as the teacher that's getting a lot of heat. I'm assuming PGCPS stands for Prince George's County Public School, which, as a side note, serves mainly Black and brown students of color. I know because I looked it up, but also I have family who live in the area. I don't know in terms of like how many teachers of color there are, but as y'all know, every school district, every school should have somewhere on their website, and it's easy to pop up, that highlights policies when it comes to teachers' social media usage. I'm not going to spare you detailing everything that's listed. If you want to look at it in your own time, I posted it in the description. But what I did want to highlight was something that could be seen as a violation to what occurred on the video, even though he said, like, you know, his administration was aware that he posts content. In the personal use section, it states employees are prohibited from conducting personal use of social media sites during work hours on PGCPS devices. Say that 10 times fast. Now, I'm not going to front. If you're an educator, you know, on a break, whatever, we've texted, we've used social media, but I think the fact that it was so loud and he was on a live, and you have thousands of people looking at where the students go to school, the students' faces, just the optics didn't look good. The second policy that I think might have caused him to be put on administrative leave is employees shall not post photos of PGCPS students for any personal social media site for any reason. Exceptions will be where the student is a relative by blood, adoption, or marriage of the employee, or the employee has received permission to post from the parents or guardians of the student, and provided the photos are not improper or inappropriate. He said that some of the students' parents follow him on social media. Whether he asked the parents or guardians beforehand, I don't know. And feel free to correct me if he said that he did in one of his lives. But again, if they're saying don't post any students for any reason, I'm assuming that also includes video too. So I think those were the two policies that honestly did him in. One thing that really stood out to me as I was listening to the discourse was just hearing from the Black male teachers. And I knew that Black male teacher that I talked about a couple of months ago that went viral late last year about low literacy rates and his students not reading on grade level. And he said something to the effect of the removal of the hair was innocent, and that the public mentions the importance of having Black male teachers, but the ones that are currently in position are not being treated well.
I always saying how we need more Black male educators. Y'all, we need more Black male educators, but when y'all get them, y'all mistreat them. Y'all try to get them out of there because they're being inappropriate. I don't think that man did anything wrong, and I'm starting to I seen something that he may potentially lose his job. Y'all keep pushing the Black male educators out. We can't win for losing, child. I don't know what else to tell y'all.
I don't know what the experience of being a Black male teacher is like. I'm a Black woman. Microaggressions are real. I understand, especially when it comes to schooling and education, that it can be hard to be in a profession where you're trying to be of service to these kids, be a role model, but also being subjected to a lot of the same structural and individual racism that they might have most likely experienced as a student. However, due to this racist world, we know how to move in majority white spaces. I think it's no different when it comes to teaching and interacting with kids in general, like just covering your ass, being on your P's and Q's. The older students get, the more those lines tend to get crossed. So, what are some best practices educators can use when interacting with students? I think just knowing your comfort level and making sure that students are aware of these boundaries. For instance, I personally do not give students my contact number. I think there's a lot of apps that educators can use. I don't know if GroupMe is still a thing, WhatsApp, Kinvo, Google Voice. Like, there's a lot of apps out there that you can interact with students and their families. When using social media with students, modeling behavior that we expect from them in terms of digital citizenship. I've worked with a lot of teachers. I've been in the education profession for over 10 years, doing a lot of direct service work. And something that was always of annoyance and struggle when it came to curriculum instruction is with students were always on their phones. A lot of the fights that I've even seen in middle and high school have always surrounded about the use of social media and miss, my man is texting another girl and he's sending her Snapchats and all of these things. So I think we have to be the change that we want to see. When sharing personal stories, you got to make sure that they're purposeful and appropriate for the classroom setting. Because everything's shared, like students soak a lot up. You got to be a great listener to your students, but also remember like your role as a mandated reporter. If a student indicates like, hey, I'm going to harm myself, or if you expect any form of abuse, it's our legal responsibility to report it. When interacting with kids one-on-one, I was also just very cautious about being alone with the student. So I tried to have somebody else present. I also kept my door open. And I think generally avoid friending students on social media just to maintain professionalism and to avoid awkward situations. In my personal opinion, I don't think Jack Lee should be fired from his job. However, there should be a conversation with him, as I'm sure there are, but also with all school leaders in that district to revisit their social media policies, especially when it comes to students. I heard someone say, and I totally agree with this, when something goes viral, it is out of your hands. In this case, the optics don't look good given the teacher having a popular following, the students' faces in the school being identified, and the discourse around it being negative. Navigating the complexities of teacher-student relationships in the digital age really require a careful balance of like professionalism, respect, and ethical behavior. And I think this story serves as a reminder. You gotta maintain important boundaries, clear boundaries to protect yourself, but also the students that you have a relationship with. Adulates, I want to hear from you. Like, what's your opinion on the situation? And how can we use this moment to redefine and strengthen teacher-student relationships, especially when it comes to online usage?